Let's bring up the Montreal Canadiens starting lineup tonight. Here you have it. Suzuki in between Caulfield and Monahan. Dvorak with Zadarnov and Gallagher. Duck in between Drouin and Anderson. Evans with Pitlick on his left and Hoffman on his right. On defense, Gulli, Savard, Harris, Kovacevic, Jacki Weidman, and Jake Allen was in goal. Let's please keep it up on the screen so that you can look at it and you can give me your opinions and give me your thoughts on what you were talking about just now in terms of the lineup and the composition. Go ahead.
Fair enough. Now, listen, I mentioned the word stopgap, and I think that this team, I don't like calling players out because players outside of the ice obviously have a life, have a family. They got to settle. They got to figure where they're going to live, house, school, all that kind of stuff gets complicated for them off the ice. But if we just purely myopically look at the lineup and who's here for the long haul and who's here just for now, I find too many players that are here for now that are going to be most likely traded at the trade deadline. You're looking at the Monahans, the Zadarnovs, the Dvoraks, the Hoffmans, potentially even Josh Anderson. That's half your forwards that are likely to go by the trade deadline. Now,
whoa, hold on a second. Wow, you really surprised me what you just said here.
Go for it.
I believe there will be some players that will be traded before the deadline.
Oh, before.
But Josh Anderson signed a 7-year deal. You believe Josh Anderson is going to be traded this year before the deadline?
I think he falls under that category of the previous GM's contracts. So it'll be interesting to see what Kent Hughes wants his team to be. Tonight's game, I wasn't very impressed by Josh Anderson. Could be the line he's playing with, but overall, I don't think that he necessarily contributed at the level of his contract. I don't think the contribution was there.
Yeah, but I don't know if you trade a contract like that in season the way you do, and he's an inconsistent player. That's it. If he was a consistent player, he'd be one of the top 5 or 6 power forwards of the game. Unfortunately, he hasn't lived up to that billing. He had 1 year where he scored 26 or 27 goals with Columbus. Yeah. There's some nights you look at him and say, oh my God, how many power forwards in the league are better than this guy? But more often than not, you look at him and you say, Anderson could have given more tonight. I didn't really see him all that much on the ice. But Andrew, when I ask you, and you talk about composition and who's going to be traded, I mean, the first guy you have to bring up is Zadarnov. He's in the final year of his contract. He has no future on this team whatsoever. The second guy you're going to have to bring up is most likely going to be Drouin, whose contract is up at the end of the year. And unless he can put up a significant amount of points and or stick around for what would be a hometown discount, and I still don't think it would get it done because I don't think he'd be within those top players that fall within the culture of the group, he'd probably have to be second. Third name is Monahan. Monahan's contract is also up at the end of the year. If the Canadiens are very far along in the rebuild, you can consider re-signing him. It looks like they're not, so if they're not, he'll be gone. But for you to throw out Anderson and Gallagher,
I didn't say Gallagher.
Pardon, Anderson and Dvorak. Pardon me.
Dvorak, yeah.
Who both have contracts and both have term, instead of Drouin and Zadarnov, you surprised me. I'm not going to lie to you. You surprised me.
Listen, everything's possible, and you brought up Anderson's contract. I make it seem like it's an easy bet that these guys are going to be traded. But what are the odds of these guys on these long-term contracts that any other team is going to want them? That's a challenge in itself of finding a trade partner for a particular player. Now, does Josh Anderson fit in the long-term vision of Kent Hughes? I mean, Kent Hughes did trade a Tyler Toffoli, who he also signed a long-term contract last year or the year before, did very well on Montreal. But when Kent Hughes saw the offer and the potential return from Calgary, he traded him. He didn't hesitate. So I think if there is a market for a Josh Anderson, it's quite possible that we'll see a Tyler Toffoli situation again where Kent Hughes likes the value proposed in the trade and based on his rebuild calendar, let's call it, his rebuild schedule, he will part with a Josh Anderson.
There's Marinaro, and that clip you just watched is from our most recent episode of the Sick Podcast. Once again, follow us on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's absolutely free, and you'll be notified when we go live. I'm Marinaro. Tell your friends about it. This podcast, like me, is pretty sick.